Hello and welcome to stream number 84 in this series where I am programming an NES game live on Twitch from scratch. Let's get going. So last time we had gotten to the point where we got the graphics loaded properly in Messin, but obviously the palettes were still wrong. What we want to do now is get that fixed up so that we can have our ship look right. The other thing I want to do is I want to add, hey Paul, I just want to add an effect where we get some clouds kind of floating by at a fast rate to give a sense of speed to what's going on here, and see if we can make this look a little bit better using the same palette functionality we were building for the last several streams. So let's get started with that. So where we were at was that we had made a bunch of changes to support the asset structure and also this. And what we had said last time was we wanted to add these sprites to the beginning, or to be loaded into the NES at startup, because right now I believe what it's doing is it's just loading. I believe it's just loading the palette based on sort of the first palettes. It's just palette 1, 2, and 3, and let's see. Yeah, so it's right now it's just looping through and taking loads a specific palette at startup. Why can't I? Is it just here? I guess so. So it's, and then it's just looping through and incrementing through the palettes, which is not right anymore because we actually handle the palettes. So let's see. So we got to fix that in the export process first, that it's not just exporting the content as a .palette file that gets then built into the code. What we want to do instead is we want to take the palettes that we have loaded in from the map file and use those. I guess we probably need to be able to define some other palettes. Let me see here. Maybe what we want to do is the following. Maybe we want to say, okay, these are the palettes we want to load up into the ROM, and then we want to say something like bear in mind, as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the need for this to become a little bit more structured than just the text file we had before. Here, actually, what we can do is let's just make this numeric, meaning we're referencing these in order. Again, this is going to have to become more structured than it is, I think, but it'll be okay for now. So then the other thing is, once we get these palettes loaded, for each of the sprites that we're attempting to put out into the ROM, we have to see which palette we're actually referring to and make sure that we set the code that's generated for the sprites to handle that appropriately. So, all right, let's start with the load map call here to make sure that it understands how to load a map palette definition. Let's see. So right now we just have the map. Why do we have just this load map? This is JavaScript. Oh, this is for the, that's for the actual map JSON file. This is what I was looking for. All right, so and what I think I want to do is I think I'm just going to have, well, here's what we can do. Do a array of palette files, and then we'll just do the same kind of thing we're doing here, where we're delimiting and iterating through, right? So let's see. So it's going to work similarly to this. We're just going to take that token, and then what was this doing? That was taking, oh, it's getting the absolute path of oh, okay, I was aliasing the pointer there. So it's been a while since I looked at this. Hopefully everybody is warmer than I am right now. It is pretty darn cold here in New York, and especially cold in my basement. I ordered a space heater for down here because it just gets too cold. All right, so palette index equals 0, and then you can say if palette index is less than max palette files, or sorry, if it's greater than or equal to, then continue, right, because we're done with that line. All right, so that gives us the name of the file, so let's just string copy into palette files, palette index, token max file folder name. Oh, yeah. I still, you know, after all these years, want to use the Unix versions of these methods. It's just, for so many years, that's what I was using, and just it's hard to get it out of my head that the Windows ones are different. Okay, there we go. So that should, by the time we're done, we should see, well, yeah, that's gonna fail. So let's get ourselves an array of strings now. Let's say don't know that we're ever going to need 16 pallets. We can always add more. One thing we probably want to do here for a second is can even add an assertion that we don't exceed that here. Just in case. All right. All right, so let's make sure that I didn't mess that up too badly. So palette files, palette index. Palette files. Yeah, no, that's not right. That's not right. The reason it didn't like that cast there. What's the matter with this? Can't do. Forget, how do you pass that? Don't normally do it that way. Palette files missing. Yeah. Just making this unnecessarily complicated, aren't I? So let's take the array of that. And then, oops, I had it there. No, wrong function. I called that something somewhere else. Okay. Just make this make that 0. It'll be easy enough to iterate through. All right. So we got our token. I'm just batting 1,000 here tonight. I'm gonna blame it on. I don't know. What am I gonna blame it on? My own silliness. Okay. I don't even know why that's open. Let's go back to this. So that's correct now, and we're just gonna copy that into there. And then we have our string, and then we're gonna increment to the next index and do the same thing. And that's fine. That's all good. That should be the last time that we actually run through that, and it is. Okay. So now, let's see. So load project. Then we have our palette files, so that's fine. So the next part we need to do is now export the map and pass the palette files to export map. You know what? Maybe we should just make that a struct in case there's anything else we need to do. Like, we're gonna need to have an order. I'm just thinking about this now as we're doing it. So we're needing an order so that we can match up this index with that. All right. Should have done this. Palette index, palette file, and then that'll make the make what we're doing with the copying of the name easier. I wonder if we should even bother loading the content into there. Maybe, I don't know. So sorry, we're gonna revamp that slightly. Make this a little less cumbersome. So I'm going to copy that into palette files, palette index, palette file like that. Oh, yeah, okay. And then the project gets called here, and then let's change this definition to be map palette. Okay. Fix that in a second. What's the... Oh. All right. So now... Could we even put that into... What is this? This is a map. It's that. Just pass the palette size. Okay. So now, here's where we are creating our palette table, and if we go to that for a second here, Sprite palettes. We've got our individual Sprite palettes and then the Sprite table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change, I think I'm going to change it so it's not called Sprite palettes anymore. It's just going to be called palettes. And then we'll do a similar thing where the name will be what we export based on, but just have that be a pretty straightforward thing. One other thing I just realized is in load project we did not set the index. Which, I mean, we could basically use the order of what it's in, but I don't know that we want to necessarily forcefully rely on that. Alright, so anyway, so I'm going to rename these to Sprite palette table and Sprite palettes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through. So right now it's iterating through all the sprites, but instead we're going to iterate through the map palettes. So palette files I palette files 0 doesn't equal null. So just check to see if the file name is empty. That's basically how we're doing that, and that's to palette size, or no, palette count. Palette size. I guess we could even set if it's valid, but I don't want to do that. Eventually I'll probably just pass the actual count that we get from the file, but just trying to get past this to get into the assembly stuff here. So let me make a note of this. To do, this should be based on the actual number of palettes loaded and not the maximum size of the palettes. Okay. So actually that's the wrong place to put that note. Should do that there when we're actually calling the export. Anyway, so going back to here, we check this and we say, okay, here we were loading the sprite. We don't actually need to do that anymore because although the palette was loaded as part of the sprite, that's no longer necessary for this. We've got the palette here, so let's see what we're doing. We're loading the sprite and then we are copying the sprite name, removing the extension, and then adding a comma, and then adding the file name, and then let's see, and that's for the sprite list. And then here we are taking the file and telling it to include the file there. Now the good thing is it looks like we don't actually have to even load the file anymore. We could just copy the existing palette file because it's just the same 4 bytes. So this actually becomes a little bit more simplified. So let's do this. So what we want to do is we don't want to load the sprite anymore. We do want to do this. We want to say palette files I, palette file. We're going to get a name into there. And then we're going to take this. And then instead of writing this out like that, all we need to do now is oh, you know, the only thing is, let's see. how is it? I wonder how it would. Well, so what we want to do is we want to do. What is it in Windows? Is it just underscore? I know there's delete. Rename. That's delete, but that's the memory delete. We're going to have to get the... We'll put that into our file system hooks, but drawing a blank right now on how to do this. This is gonna update. Oh, it's just rename. That's what I thought it was, but oh, okay. So wait a minute. So is there a copy too? Again, I thought that's what it was, but it didn't auto-complete, so I assumed I was wrong, but maybe not. Maybe it is there. No? So there's delete. All right, well... I mean, realistically, the file's there. I just want to move it into that export folder that we're currently operating in. We can open the file and then write it out to this location. So here, that creates the file, and then that palette file is likely going to have a absolute address. So let's see, get file name. We need to strip the file name from it, and then we can actually do that right through here without using the string concatenate, which isn't what we want anyway. All right, so that does that, and then what's the problem with this? Oh, no semicolon. All right, so we've got we're just getting our raw file name. We remove the extension. We get this here. We tell it to use the palette file. Then we add the .pal extension. You know, we don't even need to do that. We can just take it as it is. Oh, you know what? We do need to do that. Sorry, because we're creating the label for it. Right. All right. So now that so let's do system hooks, open file, original sprite palette, and this will be palette files. Palette file. And then we are going to read the original sprite palette into palette 4, and then we are going to write that into that, and close that, and then close that. So there you go, we wrote our own copy. Probably unnecessarily, but rather do this than try and call a command line parameter or something like that. So now we've got our palette file. So let's make sure that now when we do our export that we get to this point and things are looking correct. So in here, if we go back to this and look at the export folder, we should see that it created a palettes table and palettes Inc. So there's palettes table. Nope, why did it do that? Palettes table. Oh, it can't open it? Okay, because they're in use. All right. So let's make sure this opened. It did not. Palette file, because it is not. This should be similar to that. I suppose. What's the problem? Oh, I was checking the wrong thing here. Original Sprite palette, Sprite palette. It opened the Sprite palette, but it didn't open the original Sprite palette. Oh, to create it. Should just work in absolute paths for. Well, the problem with absolute paths is then if you go move things, then it doesn't work. Which is a pain in the behind. But for now, let's get this working. Yeah, that opened now. So we're just copying the content. And then once we get done with that, enemy 0. Oh, do we not actually have that defined yet? That's entirely possible. Yeah, so let's just call this enemy 0. Eventually we'll actually build the right palette for that, but the point right now is to get it to work. Assuming the assets are all correct and organized correctly. All right. So now, okay, I want to change that to, I want that to be palettes instead of sprite palettes, because there may be background palettes and stuff like that in it now. Okay, so we've got that. Let's just hit a breakpoint there. Let's go look at those files. So palettes table, we now have that, and that looks good. And if we go to the export folder, we should have this should match up. I'm just going to do one just to make sure. Where is it? Enemy. So it copied it right. What we then need to do is change the code here because it is including those files. Okay, and it won't be able to open that yet because it's what's the problem now? Won't be able to open that because it's got the it's in the export folder and not the main folder. Oh, because I renamed it instead of just copying it. What was this? This was flyby, I think. Flyby 0. And then I had explode, which I had renamed to FX0. So that was explode 0. Oops. Alright, so now that's all exported. Let's see. Why did we get a .pal file with nothing in it? I don't know. Let's move everything into here. So, alright, let's get out of the export. Okay, we're not in the export folder. So we've got those two should go now. So del sprite palette .inc, del sprite palette table inc. And then these should be here. So if I make palettes high is already defined. Palettes high. Gotta fix this. Oh, did I call it that for the meta tiles? Is that what happened? I did. Darn it. All right. Let's fix it this way, because that, I forgot about that, obviously. All right, so now we should be loading in, oh, didn't realize I have Discord still open. I'll close that. So now we are loading in 4 palettes, or are we not? Looks cool, but not what it's supposed to do. Let's take a look. So there's player 0, player 1, enemy 0, FX 0, and in Palettes Inc. we have player 0. It doesn't load it. I was hoping it would load it into a hex editor view, but no such luck there. All right, so I thought it was loading just the initial palette order, but I guess it's not. Let's give it the palette data to load in the appropriate order for the map. So let's see. So right now I don't think we have anything that tells it what palettes to do we? Palette count +2. This is for the meta tiles, right? Yeah, so that's for the meta tiles. And it is just writing out the 4 bytes there. So what I want to do is, similarly, I want to make it load 4 more palettes for the sprites based on what sprite palettes should be used. Actually, thinking about it, this is probably not necessary, because based on the sprites that are in use, we would be able to figure out I'm going to leave it. I'm not 100% sure we don't need it, but alright, so map palette 0 equals 0. Just make this a straight load of those palettes in order 0 through 4. So what it'll do, sorry, 0 through 3. So what it'll do is it'll load these 4 palettes. It'll write those out, and then we got to change the 6502 to understand that there are 4 additional bytes there. So in the assembler, when we're loading our map or load level, let's see. There's the first palette loop, and that loads the background palettes. And then, let's see, Sprite palette loop. Oh, wait. Was it already doing that? Oh. Wait a minute. Now I'm confused, because it was already doing that. Why? Unless there's something wrong with the palette files being loaded into... Oh, hold on a second. So let's fix this, because I had renamed these to palette instead of sprite palette. This should be... And then that part's okay. It's just the naming there had to change. Okay. So that re-exported. Let's make sure that that looks the same way it did before. Okay, so that seems okay. And if I build that, let me load the level. Okay, now we're back to actually seeing the colors on the sprite, or some colors on the sprite. So what palettes got loaded? 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that looks good. Now the problem is that the sprite itself, when it's being drawn, it doesn't know which palette to use. Let's fix that, and then we should actually get sprites with proper palettes for the first time in a while. Alright, so when we go here, for the code that's generating this, where is it? Here's our palette and mirror. So what we want to do is we want to say, how do we want to do this? So for I don't know if we can use I. Can we use I? We can use I. No, we can't use I. Let's use pal count, or pal index. How about that? Pal index is less than palette size. Okay. So we're going to loop through and find which palette value we want. So sprite palette value, or sprite palette index equals 0, and then we just say if project, what did I call it? What did I pass in? Palette files. Palette index, no. Palette file. Well, so that's not going to work because we may have the fully qualified name here. So let's just get the file name. Get file name, temp, next file folder name, palette files. So that gives us that, and then we want to grab from current sprite. What is it? Sprite positions J file just palette. So we just want to grab the name of that palette, and then if they are the same, in fact we can move that out there because we don't need to grab that every time through that loop. Then sprite palette index equals pal index and break. And then I don't remember, I think it's offset by a bit, but let's take a look. NESDev. Where's the OAM? OAM. And is, oh, it's the first 2 bits. Okay. So, and then mirroring we're not doing anything with right now, so we just say sprite palette index and run that. Okay, so that re-exported everything. Hopefully we get some correct values there for the draw code that populate the sprites, let's take a look at what we've got here. Draw entities, draw player. So palette 0, palette 1, and it should be palette 1 again. It is. Awesome. So that should, I think, work at this point. So let's rebuild this and go back to this, and hey, there's our ship with the right colors finally. Now, bullets are wrong, but that's okay. So let's see here. Let's go into the PPU viewer. We have our palettes loaded in order, and now, one of the things that we didn't do, for example, is we didn't change the explosion. I'm in the wrong folder. Let's see, PNG, assets, PNG. So if we look at this, this looks okay here, but the problem with it is that the palette that it's using, the name doesn't match because of the way that we had changed the names up for what was loaded, and we should be able to. I think we should be able to easily fix that here. We'll see how easily. If I take this and animated is true, should fix the let's replace all. Come on, man. There we go. I don't remember what I was saying, but we need to change this to match that, and then we should be able to just re-export this sprite. And open them back up. Okay. So what? Oh, you know what? I didn't set the frame size. That's probably why. So PNG to let's do sprite to JSON. Yeah. Okay. I didn't set the frame size properly. That was the problem. The rest is good. It's animated. It's got a width. It's got a height. Those are all correct. So if I reload, well, if I re-export it and then I look at it again, that looks good. And then let's go re-export our map. Well, we can do that from here. I think that worked. Here's what we can do. We can delete that whole export folder and see if we get all the files. Okay, and then make that remade, and then when we go reload this, it should look, the explosion should look okay. And it does. Sweet. All right. That's awesome. So, wow. All right. So that took a lot of streams to get there. But the nice thing about that is that now we're in a situation where we can have a lot of control over how we bring our assets in repeatedly as we make changes to them. And the process of taking a PNG should hopefully be not as painful in the sense of like getting the background correct and stuff like that. So what we can do, for example, is I can create a new 16 by 16. And let's create a really crappy looking cloud using white and gray. What we're going to do is we're going to create a sprite that looks sort of like a cloud using those colors, knowing that they exist on the ship sprite, and then we will recreate it, re-export it with the asset tool using the palette files for the player to actually get something that matches that palette so that it can reuse it and get and we can save having to have a separate palette for this, if that makes sense. Basically, to rephrase that, because I was kind of looking at what I was doing instead of focusing on what I was saying. We should be able to now reuse the palette from the ship on this cloud thing, with the idea that we're sharing the palette easily, more easily than we could if we had to do something like manually import and hope that they line up and stuff like that. So let's save this as cloud, and then, oops, it saved it as an aseprite. Well, that's okay. So it's indexed, and let's save as a PNG. Okay. All right, so now what we should be able to do is I should be able to say PNG to sprite, cloud.png, and then I should be able to look at this and it should look okay and have things in the right, oops, in the right positioning, and it does. So that's wow, okay, that's exciting. That worked first try, so that's good. So now what I should be able to do is, now that I know that this looks okay, I should be able to say, okay, so sprite to JSON to get our definition file out there. And now we should have cloud.json. And then what I want to do is I want to change this to player 0, with the idea that I'm going to re-export this now every time using this JSON file. Oh, I didn't include and now the sprite, the palette it uses should be the same as the one for the ship, which it is. You've got that blue color there for the cockpit glass, so that's good. And then in the project, we just say I want to add cloud.sprite, and then I tell it I want to export the project, and it exported it. And so what we should see now is there's that. Where'd my other folder go? I don't need that one. I guess I closed it. Give me a new one, Explorer. So there's my assets folder, export. So I should see cloud in here. It's there. Okay, so let's replace those. And go back to my command line and make. And we built, and if we go back to Messen, which has 3 PPU viewers open, that's too many. We're not going to see any clouds yet because we're not doing anything with them, but we should see them in the char view, and there it is, and it looks like it would be correct. Can I... All right, so here's what we'll do. Now that we've got this working, let's create, well, after we load our level, let's set up an entity at entity, at entity 1, and we'll make it a cloud that just appears on the screen. And then from there, we should be able to see it actually correctly. So all right. Let's do this. Let's load x1. Am I doing this right? I think I'm doing this right. Let's just take all this stuff and we're going to put it at the same position. That seems wrong. Load a data x type x. No, that I guess that's right. I don't remember. That's the, again, I've said this a bunch of times, but it's like one of those weird things where once you've stopped messing with the assembly for a while, your brain kind of forgets some of how this works. The state doesn't matter. Yeah, programmer art, exactly. All right, I broke it. I figured I had, right, right. It's, yeah, dumb. It's not 1. I knew that seemed wrong, but I was thinking that the assembly is smarter than it is. Yeah, it should be offset by size of entity. That's why. Okay. I knew that. Except that it's still not working. All right. Scripting. Let's take a look at our... So we got the player, and that's it. LDX. Am I forcefully initializing the entities after that? Is that what's going on that's messing this up? Or is it just not? Game state, jump game loop. That should be okay. I'm surprised that wasn't it. Let's go to the code. All right, so let's restart the game. So what is the value of x actually set to? AA. Really? AA, that's... That's not right. Well, it could be right. It seems like a lot of bytes, though. One, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, that's a lot of bytes. That's not right. Size of entity. Why? Scope struct. That's too many bytes. Load X, size of entity. Oh! Damn it, because I forgot the pound. Alright. That should fix that. So X is now 9, which is right. And then what we should see is hey, there's our cloud. And it looks correct. Alright, cool. So now what I want to do is I want to change this and change the behavior of the cloud. So I want to change it so that the let's see. That is the Y world position, which is 80C, which is technically right for that, but I actually want it to be a little bit let's see. So 80C, and then I want to make it closer to the edge of the screen. So that 80C is based on the number of what? It's the number of metatile rows, if I remember right. Yeah, it's amazing how you can make one little mistake and forget something like a pound, and that's what broke the file, or broke the code. So it's 100 metatiles high. So if I recalculate that, that's 100 metatiles times 32. And then I subtracted half a screen, right? Seems like too many. Where's my other calculator? 80C is 2060. 2060 divided by 32 is 64. Because it's one screen's full. Oh, except that it's... No, it's... Alright, so if it's 100 I wonder if that's actually interesting. I wonder if this initialization is wrong, and that's why the player does that little jump. If we're at the top, if we want to be at the topmost part of the screen, if we're 100 metatile rows, that's times 32 pixels, that's 3200, and then it's 240 by 200 is the screen. No, 256 by 240. So minus 240, so that's B90. So that's our world position, and the screen position that gives us is 0. And that's our cloud. Let's make sure that that actually shows up in the right place now. Oh, I closed messing. Okay. So that's pretty close. It actually has to be, let's make the screen position 8 and add 8 to that. I mean, all of this is gonna, the idea, so what I want to do is to help add sort of to the illusion of speed, I want cloud pieces to kind of, little cloud puffs to kind of float down across the screen pretty rapidly. We have some other cool ideas about ways of making it look like you're flying high above the ground and at a high rate of speed, but I'm not going to talk about those yet. For now, let's suffice it to say we've got that working, so I'm happy. And then I want to say if we have entity type cloud, then branch of equal to process cloud. And then we need to actually process that in the game loop. And all we really want to do is I want to add to the Y position and the world Y position. So increment entities plus entity Y position X and Y world position. You know what we need to do for the Y position? I don't care about a carry, but for this I do, because I want this to be actually calculated properly. Come on. Branch not carry clear to the next label, which is this one. And if that happens, then we want to increment entities plus entity Y world position plus 1x. And then compare Y position, load A to, let's just say, what is it? It's not F, it's not FF, it's 240 decimal, so it's F0 minus 8, so 232, that's E8. So I want to compare it to, if we get to E8, oops, I'm in the wrong spot. Load A E8, compare to entities plus entity Y position X, and then if it is not equal, then we will, what do we do when we're done processing? Jump to entity complete, entity complete, otherwise, here we'll do the jump to, but otherwise then what we want to do is load A0 and store A into entities, entity, type X. So if we hit the bottom, then we are done with that cloud and it should go away from our entity list. Okay, So that's not doing what it's supposed to. Oh, I know why. We do the add and carry, and we don't do the store. That doesn't work. Okay. Process pcloud. That's not what I said. Process cloud, please. No such scope. And yeah, I can't spell, I know. Oh man, my hands are so cold. Dreaded range error, 1429. 1429, entity complete. So branch if equal to this next label, otherwise jump to that, and then work here. Okay. Let's see if that actually, there it goes. It actually disappeared. Let's check the entity script to make sure that it is actually out of, yep. So if we reload this, come on, reload, please. We'll see that the cloud is there, and then when it hits the bottom, it goes to 0 instead of 4. Okay, so that took it out of play. That's cool. And then that's all working. Okay, cool. One other thing we need to do is the player ship can't move below that point because we had put in an artificial block due to the status bar that used to be there, but that's no longer valid. So let's fix that. So let's see. Compare the x-coordinate with 240, should not exceed, right. So similarly, we want to check against E8 instead of what we were checking before on the Y side of things. Let's see what we were doing. So we were doing AF. We want to do E8 now. And the top is okay. Let's make this 238. And now the ship should, oops. Ship should allow you to scroll all the way to the bottom. Did I not do that right? Compare it there. Is there another spot where I'm checking it? Oh, I'm checking it here too. 232. And here, E8. Wait a minute. Y, add carry, Y world position. Okay. So those are those caps there that we were using. So that's fine. Make that. Reload that. All right, we're not scrolling over, but I guess we want to do to 224, E0. Well, if we're, let's take a look at this for a second here. Oh, so it is, oh, it's because, all right, it's because Messin is cutting off the overscan a little bit, which is what we wanted to do, but I just, I do want to cap it at a point where we can see it at least a little bit, even with the overscan. So let's fix that everywhere. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so remake that, and redo that, and yeah, so we still see a little bit of the ship. I'm okay with that. I just didn't want it to be able to go all the way off. And then we still have the explosion, and that looks good. That is pretty excellent. That is pretty excellent. Do we want to try, instead of using the flyby, do we want to try use one of Jordan's actual enemies? Because they look a heck of a lot better than anything I've got here. We've got the scout ship. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let's get the scout ship in here, because that looked really cool. Let's go to tiled. So we've got our enemies in that layer. Did I pass it? Yep. So let's get rid of that. Remove. Remove. All right. Let's see if I can remember how to do this now. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Let's we need to create the new tile set for it called Scout, and the image source is the Scout PNG. Now the only thing I don't remember is if that was exported. I don't think that was exported. Yeah, it was not exported the previous way, so, or the new way rather, I should say. PNG to Sprite, scout.png. Okay, so that looks good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rename the Scout palette to be the enemy palette. What's going on, tiled? Is that too much for you? I don't know why you're trying to search for a solution to the problem. You're not going to find it, Microsoft. You can't even solve problems with your own software, let alone somebody else's. All right. Let's try this again. Let's save the changes before trying to create a new tile set. Close that tile set. Let's create a new one there called Scout. It's 16 by 6. Actually, is it 16 by 16? I think it's just 8 by 8. I don't remember. PNG. It's 8 by 16. Okay. 8 by 16. Save as that. And then let's export that as this. And And then I should be able to import the tile set. Open. All right, there's the Scout. And then I want the, let's see. Here's the select objects, edit polygons. How do I place this as an object? Insert rectangle, point ellipse, tile, template, insert text, offset layers. There's a way. It tells you how long ago I did this. Do I drag it into? Now I can place meta tiles that way. New tile set, embed tile set, export tile set as. Object types editor. I want to go into object mode, don't I, or something like that? Select that. What am I doing wrong? Oh, objects. There we go. Should be able to. Why can't I place an object? Damn you, tiled. What don't you like about what I'm doing? Stamp brush, terrain brush, bucket fill, shape, erase, rectangular, magic wand, select objects, edit polygons, insert, crap. I can insert tiles, but I want to insert, did it, oh, it actually inserted it there, finally. All right, so we've got our Scout chips. Okay. That was annoying. So let's export that as a JSON file. Okay. Yes, replace that. All right, so if we go, sorry that took so long. It's been a while since I had messed with that and I forgot. And as you can see, it's not exactly the most intuitive. So there's our enemy layer, and it's using GID5, and GID5 is scout.tsx. Okay, so that's good. That means that that's working properly. Now what I want to do is I want to take a look at, so Scout is using, it says it's using 2 palettes. Why is it using 2 palettes? Sprite to JSON, Sprite. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got here. Where's my file at? PNG. Scout. All right, so we've got those 2. If I take a look at this just as is, looks fine. I wonder why it thinks there are multiple. I don't know. All right, so what we'll do is we will call this enemy0.pal, because all the enemies, at least for now, share that palette, and then we will rename. You know, I just want to take a look and see what that actually is. That's, if it's any different. That's all 0. I wonder if they're just all transparent colors. That could be it. So, all right. The good news is it doesn't matter. Get rid of this one because it's no longer relevant. We have that. All right. So now we have this, and we can re-export, reconvert this with this process, and then we have, oh. Now why did it do that? Was there actually a color that I missed? Huh. 1, 2, 3, and background. So that's interesting that it didn't. It's interesting that it didn't do that correctly. I'm not sure that I want to spend too much time on that right now, just for the sake of getting the enemy into the game and seeing what it looks like. So let's focus on that right now. Enemy0.pal, open that, and let's just add 00 as a palette color so that when we go to re-export it, it will, with the JSON file, it will actually look correct. Oh, and this is got an extra comma. That's still wrong. Let's go back to this for a second. So the light gray is okay, but the dark gray is no good. Should I try 2D and see if that fixes it? I should have kept Fred open. 2D. Let's see if re-exporting it with that. Yeah, that fixed it. So it doesn't like 0, 0. I'll have to see why that is. Even though that's technically a valid color, there's nothing wrong with that, but something about that it doesn't like. Where can I make a note of that? Export palette. No. Get indexed image tile. Where is that called? This. Do 0, color 0 seems not to work properly, even though it's a valid gray. Have to figure out why that is. Okay. So that's that. We've got that there, and then we've got this here. And that is enemy0.pal, and that's fine. Explode, bullet, player, cloud. So that's enemy0. That's good. Just trying to make sure we have everything sort of accounted for in terms of our files and palettes and stuff. I think that's okay. So if I... The only thing that's gonna break, which isn't a problem, is the whole idea of the flyby. That no longer will exist because I removed them from the map. But that's okay. let's first of all prove that that's true. It should fail when I run the make, but it doesn't know what a flyby is. Yeah, same thing with flyby 2, that's fine. So, alright. So let's change this one to scout, and then flyby 2 doesn't exist anymore. And let's build this. And messin is just loading random tiles based on what's in memory in the ROM. Alright, there goes our cloud. Let's see if we get our... Well, first of all, let's pause and take a look at the PPU and see if our scout is there now instead of the flybys. And it is. So that's good. That's promising. Let's see if they appear. I don't remember exactly where I put them in the map. Hopefully it's not way up. There they are. Alright, the only problem looks like the pallets are wrong, but I can live with that so far. Let's see what's going on. So that's the pallet it should be. But that's not the palette that it loaded. So draw entities. Let's see. Draw scout sprite. Palette 4. Oh, palette 4. 4? How is that possible? Enemy 0.pal. Shooter.text. Enemy 0.pal. Okay, so the good news is the pallet's in the right place, but the bad news is that it is exporting the scout ship with the wrong pallet index. So let's... Oh, okay. So it's 4... But it's 4 because it doesn't find it. Sorry, I was ignoring the chat. So, Mike was converting the immediate values to hex before loading. Was curious. Oh, I think it supports decimal, but I just use hex. I don't know, force of habit. Getting the enemy working is more important than the look. No, it's true, it's more important than the look, but I also kind of want to make sure that this process is working correctly and that putting new things in is easy. So what I want to do is once we have this working properly, I want to get this guy in. And that should use the same palette as this guy. And that should give us a good sense of how this is working. And then it should look good. It should look the same. So let's see. Where's my sprite rendering code? Export. All right, so this is the export code. Why can't it find for the scout ship? the palette. So let's take a look first of all at palette files. So there's player 0, player 1, enemy 0, FX0. What sprite are we looking at? This is FX0, so that's explode, I imagine. So then the next one is, so it's still the explode sprite. And that's because that's got a bunch of positions. Let's... All right. Are we still on that? Oh, yeah, okay. Where does it load the sprite up for the next one? There. Alright, so what's this one? That's the bullet, that's the player, and that's the cloud, and that's the scout. Alright, so that's the draw cloud sprite. We're exporting the character ROM. It's not animated, so let's go through and take a look. So current sprite position 0. What is the... It's saying enemy 0.pal. Is it a... Did I capitalize it or something? No. Okay, so that should be good. So if we go over here, temp2 is... Oh, it's nothing. Get file... Oh... So that's a bug. And get file name that if it's not... Let's see. So while path length is greater than or equal to 0... Alright, so I gotta fix this. This is just an edge case that I didn't account for, that if you... Let's see. If you are using a relative name, it just should copy that into there, and then you're done, rather than not setting anything, which is why it's not working, because then it's not actually finding the palette. Alright, so now if I go to re-export that, that should actually work now. So let's go back to this and copy that content, paste it, replace, make, and there's Messin, and I'm just going to speed up the emulator. Still slow because of how slow the scrolling is. Yes, there they are. Obviously they're awful enemies and there's no challenge there, but we'll get there. Okay, cool. So now, along the same lines of what I was saying before, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, let's say we want to add this enemy, copy this, what is this, 18 by 18? Let's see if we can fit it into a 16 by 16. Color mode RGB, change over to the NES palette. Why aren't you selecting what you're supposed to? Oh, because I'm on the wrong layer. That's why. There we go. Okay, it does fit in a 16 by 16. Excellent. That looks good. And then let's change it to... Oh, we gotta... Oh. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. It copied a whole bunch of other stuff here. I just wanted you to copy this part, please. Okay. Except you undid all the other changes I made, which I don't want. Okay. There we go. All right, so now... Good. So that's there. That's RGB mode. Let's change it to indexed. Let's save. What did he call this one? Did he give it a name? Medium? I don't know. We'll just call it medium. We don't need to be creative about the naming of that. All right, so here's where we test this out. So asset tool, PNG to sprite, medium. Let's make sure that that worked right. Medium, sprite. Oh, I didn't spell it right. That time it worked right. I wonder what in the translation it didn't like. That's so weird. All right. So that's good. And then we're going to say sprite to JSON to get our metadata out of this thing. So there. Oh, and it only generated the one palette file. I wonder if there were some other black colors that it didn't like, or it thought were different, and so it then used those to create a second palette, which is why we got that behavior. Now, here's, I think, where we can do some cool stuff. So, let's see, how big is that area? Do we know? That's 10. It doesn't tell me the dimensions of the selection. Let's turn on a grid. 0, 0, 8, 8. So this part is actually a tile, and this is wasted space. So we can do something pretty cool here. We can say we want this tile, we want this to be a tile, and this is a tile. So this is 0, 0, and that is 0, 8, and then this is like 8. How many pixels is that? 1, 2, 3, 8, 3. Does that seem right? 8, 3. So 0, 0, 8, 0. We don't need. Sorry, 0, 0 and 0, 8. We don't need 8, 0. Let's see if I got that right. That was the problem we had this with the ship the other night, where it wasn't rendering properly, and it turned out I messed up my coordinates. So 0, 0, 0, 8, and 8, 3. I think that'll work. Let's re-export that. That looks right. Did I? Oh, I cut off the green by 1 pixel. Okay. That is no problem. So make that 2. And then take a look at it again. Cool. So we've saved the tile there. And anytime we re-export it, we can do that, assuming nothing changes where it moves out of the bounds of that. But so that's good. And it's using enemy 0, which is what you'd expect. That's a problem in the export. And then I should be able to just export that whole thing. Oh, you know what? We didn't add it to the map, though, anywhere. So let's create that as a new tile set for tiled. Call it medium. And it's 16 by 16. Where is that guy? Medium. He's there. So that's that, and then let's export that. As a JSON. And then we can close that and import that as a new external tile set called medium. And there's medium. We can add him along with our scout ships right on the map. Right? And then I can export that back out. And then just export the whole project. And I'll make it so that I don't have to manually do this copy every time. Do the replace. And I then do make. And where's Messin? It's closed. Shooter.asm. Shooter.nes. So the only thing that's going to happen that's a little weird is that we're going to see the medium ones appear and do nothing because there's no logic to process them right now. But we can let's prove that they appear, and then once we've proven that they appear, then we can add some logic to them to actually do the same thing as the flyby or the scout now. Yep, there they are. See, so the problem is that they're not actually, there's no code behind them to move at all. So that's why the scouts work, but the medium ship does not. So that's pretty damn cool. Process scout. Process scout. Oh, okay. Same thing with medium. So obviously we can't get, or maybe not obviously, but to my mind obviously, we're not going to get behavior out of the enemies without any code being there for it. But once we fix the fact that there's no code behind it, then there they are. And everything is rendering correctly, and they've got the right colors. That is pretty excellent. I can shoot one. And I can explode still, and that looks good. Now, one thing that I did notice, I'm curious if we're seeing some sort of weird drawing behaviors because of the number of sprites. Oh, no. Okay, I know what it is. It's because those are so much larger. I guess they're wrapping around to the top. Yeah, they're wrapping around to the top and disappearing. Okay, that I can deal with that. That's pretty cool. So now So now the nice thing about this is anytime we add new enemies, we just do that process of getting them prepped up, and then I can just come into tiled and say, okay, here are some medium ships that are going to get dropped into the game. Re-export the map, and then the make file will be set up to do this process of exporting the assets and copying the files over. So like I said, I won't have to do that as a manual thing. And then once that is all done, I wish I knew why on occasion Windows just totally can't deal with the fact that it's running on an SSD and runs like crap. But anyway, you build that and you reload the game, and there goes our cloud, and we should start getting ships appearing soon. There are medium ships that I popped in just a moment ago. That's pretty excellent. And now we're getting into, we have to deal with the background still not drawing right. I'm not sure why that bumper thing is it's not right. I don't know if it's just a weird export problem. No, it actually looks like it modified. Huh, I wonder why. Were there too many? Oh, you know what? I bet you the way that we changed the conversion code. Let's see. So I have a feeling that what it is because we made those changes for the way that we're exporting the we are exporting the sprite, but we didn't do corresponding changes for the image palette, sorry, the meta tiles. And so my guess is that there is a problem where it doesn't understand, but it's also possible that there's another bigger issue. Like, let's take a look at this. How many, so this has, oh, and you know, also, this isn't using the transparencies. Here, let's see if we can fix this real quick and see if that addresses the issue. So if we do a new one, that's 32 by 32. Let's make it RGB with transparent background, and I paste this. That's good. Let's delete the center. Okay, and then let's convert over to this palette. And let's convert to indexed color. Okay. I think that will fix the problem. Let's see. Because likely that was caused by the fact that I made that in Photoshop and it, you know, didn't have the right color setup and lots of other things. Okay, so that's better. It's better. It's not great. I wonder if it's because that should be gray. Which one was it using? None of those? better. Still not what I was looking for. But at least now it probably look a little bit better when we re-export the game and load it up. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm not sure. I'm not going to do that tonight. We made good progress. We got that palette stuff working. The game actually uses the right colors for the sprites. That's cool. The title screen's gone because the palette got changed. Oh, it looks okay. I mean, it's not great. It's obviously just placeholder garbage, but better than it did before, and the collision still works. Okay. Yeah, we just got to look at why sort of more complex meta tile stuff is not working. Probably need to also fix the code that deals with when the scouts get when their entities get destroyed, since they're, well, it looks like the scout and the medium both have the same problem. They're just going too far down the screen and it's looping over. And then we should probably start integrating some of this background stuff in and messing around with what that's going to look like. I'm excited to have actual art that isn't made by me, because it then doesn't suck. We can even fix this bullet sprite. Our bullet sprite has an issue because it's using a totally different palette than everything else. Those are the enemy bullets. This is the effects palette. It should be using, and that would be for the explosion as well. We don't have an explosion built in that palette, but so we have. I think that looks so cool, and that too. I'm not sure how the colors are being rotated there. I have to look at the animation a little bit to see, to actually puzzle through how that works, but that still looks great. And then even things like that little animation looks really fantastic. So some really cool stuff to bring into it, but I'm excited that we got the ship loading. We got that little cloud going. So the sprites are loading correctly with their colors based on what we've configured. The backgrounds are looking good, relatively speaking. And we'll get all of this kind of moving forward and get some of the game design stuff done so that it's an actual game and not just a tech demo. So start working on some of the elements of how the game is played. One of the sort of key things that I wanted from the very beginning is I want the game to feel fast, and obviously it doesn't right now with the way that the background is scrolling. I'm hoping that we'll be able to achieve some things like the clouds, like other elements related to how enemy motion works in the game, will help improve that overall feel. Like I really like the idea of a shooter that's both got a lot of skill required to dodge enemy attacks and shoot the enemies down, but also has this feeling of actually flying at high altitude with other enemy ships that are flying at high speed and trying to attack you. So while that sounds simple, like you'd say, oh, we'll just scroll the background faster and that makes it feel faster, that's true. That's one way to do it, and that is something that we're going to do in some parts of the game. Part of the challenge there is the amount of data that needs to be made available. in order to scroll, because even this, which is a pretty large map, because of the way things are set up, you know, there's only so many really long maps that we can make. So we're going to kind of do some interesting tricks to make the maps feel longer and not like repetitive, but just have a sense of actually traversing a world, and then also have transitions between those areas that make sense and actually look cool, and continue that sense of speed. So there's a lot that has to be done still, both graphically and from a programming perspective. But I'm excited to have the ship fully in there correctly, and have the tool set sort of coming together. Got to fix the, like I said, got to fix the background stuff. The controls are, I mean, they're okay. I'm actually, now that you can actually move down all the way, that's feeling pretty good. I think I may want to, I want to implement that banking animation that Jordan made. Where is aseprite? So I've shown this one before, but when you turn, the bottom tiles will turn as well. So we got to figure out how to make that happen. But that will look pretty excellent. That'll really make it come together even more so, and make it feel more like a sort of polished game. Yeah, I'm pretty reasonably happy with that. And then there are going to be certain other things like power-ups and whatnot that we have to work through. You can see at this speed, even though this map isn't like horrifically large by comparison to, you know, say an RPG world or something like that, at this speed it does take a fairly long amount of time to traverse. And I've sped up the emulator to run as fast as it can at 140 frames per second. It's still taking a while. We're finally getting to the end of it. I put those barriers at the end so that the ship will crash. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. Got that going, and we'll see what we're going to work on for Thursday. Probably get some of the background art in so that it looks cooler than just having this programmer art in place, depending on how long it takes us to get the issues of the conversion of the meta tiles working. It may not actually be a problem. It may be that the background tiles are actually working fine. It's just that bumper asset is actually not converting well, because it won't, just for the sake of the, you know, because of the way that the palettes and colors work. Yeah, it does feel good to have real assets in the game, Banchaku. So we'll have to, and then we've reached the end of the world. Here we go, it's going to crash. Alright, so yeah, pretty cool. I'll think about what we're going to do for Thursday, but I'm really excited with the progress we made finally tonight and got wrapped up. All that long work on the asset tool. It'll be good to get more stuff into the game on the design side. So as always, if you have questions, you can reach me on Twitter at Clearvis. I'm also on Nintendo Age, Azelius. I post the recordings on YouTube. Feel free to comment and ask questions there. People have been checking it out. We're reaching almost 700 subscribers, which is kind of crazy, but I'm glad that people are finding these useful. So yeah, take care and have a good night.